Okay, the Planning Commission meeting for Monday, August 3rd, it is called to order. Can we have the roll call, please?
David Brent.
Here.
Scott Gold.
I'm here.
Aaron Peterson.
Here.
Justin Rodriguez. And absent, and Jack Williams.
Here. Okay, so we do the Pledge of Allegiance. Lead us, Aaron.
Sure. Hand over your heart, repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, public comment, I have one speaker slip. Is that Carrie? Is that? Please come forward. Three, five, there's nobody else here, so we'll give you some leeway.
We also may have people on Zoom and on the phone with us.
Oh, okay, good.
My name is Karen Kuiper, and I live in Solvang. And I got in the mail a printout. It says Sustainable Groundwater Management Quarterly Newsletter. And I noticed that we have a lot of groundwater wells and that we are depending on groundwater a lot. So, and I asked once somebody if Ed St. George would have had his way of putting that shopping center there, then we would have probably to order water from the city water, right? Because the groundwater, we are right now probably in the new normal. The new normal is very little rain. So if you take a lot of groundwater, the trees will thank you for that because they have a lot of big roots, and they also what they have what the heart of the tree is a 30-foot long feeder root, and that taps into the groundwater. And if the trees are dying, then you know that the groundwater is too low, that we have drawn too much groundwater out of it. And so, and where I live right now, the groundwater must be okay. My trees are okay, so that's a good thing. Anyway, where I used to live in Goleta, my husband, he passed away. He was owner-builder, and we couldn't get a hookup there for about 7 years. And so on, he said, well, what the hell? He said, we are building anyway. And so we had a well driller there. And our house was right next to the Tecolote Creek there. So, and we had a geologist, and he said, it's always water there near a creek. So we did that, and our water had too much boron, and it had too much iron. So my hair turned pink, my laundry turned pink. So what I did was I had to go every week with sacks, laundry sacks, and go to the local laundromat. And that for 7 years. I got sick and tired of that one. So what I'm saying is, if we have a large a project here like at St. George or so, now he, I guess, wants to build apartment buildings. So, and you cannot tell a tenant only one shower a day if he goes out and plays tennis. So he's going to be smelly. He wants to take another shower. So, and who's controlling that? You? No, nobody. So what I'm saying is, there has to be an EIR, and he has to show how much water he thinks he can take out. And then the other thing is, if because of his building there, condos and all that stuff, if we have to get water from the city. Now, if we right now pay, let's say, 2 cents a gallon, I don't know, I'm just grabbing that. So we might pay 4 cents a gallon because we pay for it too then. So that's what I'm saying is, and the public won't like that. So if they have to pay for a guy who has a Ferrari, and which is about 100,000 grand, so if we pay for his fancy, you know, so that's what I want to say. If there's an EIR or so made and we know how much he is going to use and can we afford that? And right now, my son, he is a meteorologist, and he said the new normal is little rain, and the water table will go down. So, and especially during the summer months like June, July, August, and the likes, you know, and every heavy draw on that is going to be not so good for the environment, you know. And the Democrats, they all walk with a green foot and all that. That will be a brown foot if we take a lot of water out for frivolous expenditure and all that sort of thing. That's what I think. So that's basically what I have, and I don't know if you gentlemen have that already. It's from the groundwater management areas and participation local agencies in the, you know, this area here, and that comes out quarterly. So that's basically all I have to say, and like I said, and it's housing development there. If you look at it, I had a printout from the computer. Looks like a garrison. Really awful thing, you know. I mean, it doesn't look good in the Danish style neighborhood. And I live right around the corner. And then you have to consider that the traffic from the mountain road comes right down from there, and it passes the Chumash, and then it goes down into the city there, you know. And there's Ed with his crummy trucks and all that stuff, makes a lot of dust, a lot of noise, and we are a tourist town, you know. We are not LA or someplace like that. The tourists want to see peace and quiet. That's why they're coming out here. And they want to see beauty and not Ed's crummy trucks there and the noise and the dust. That's probably all I have to say. Thank you
Thank
for
you very
listening.
much. Is there anybody else in attendance tonight?
I see one person on Zoom. If you'd like to speak on items not on the agenda, please raise your hand now. Looks like we,
Anybody
no
on the
more.
phone?
nobody on the phone.
Okay, well, moving on. Any requests for continuance, withdrawals, or additions? No? Okay. Any conflicts or ex parte communications? Seeing none, moving on. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from our July 6th meeting? Has everybody read them and happy with them?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I wasn't present. Do I
Okay.
abstain or?
Yeah.
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 Aye.
Okay,
So the vote would be 3-1-1.
right. Okay.
Pardon me?
There was a no vote?
No, he was
An
absent.
absent, one
There's one
absent,
absent.
one
He
absent.
was not there.
He wasn't here, so he couldn't vote on it.
So, I'm sorry, it's
So it's-
301.
3-0, right.
Got it. Thank you.
Have more votes than people here.
Good point. So, discussion items,
Sure.
shall we move on?
Tonight, we're going to review the discussion that we've had over the last couple of months on the ADU, accessory dwelling units. And our recommendation is to go ahead and work with the state law rather than the city of Solvang adopting its own ordinance. We had many discussions through December, then in February and March on different versions of the ordinance that could come forward from Solvang. Since that time, we've issued a total of 15 ADUs. And so we're finding that the work that we've done using and applying the state law is working. And to avoid confusion, complications, any misinterpretation between the state law and the local ordinance, we think we should move forward with relying on the state law provisions. And I just want to remind you some of the things that we talked about previously. The state laws went into effect in January of this year. We had previous second unit ordinances. Those have all been determined null and void now. We just work with ADUs. If we can flip to the next slide. We don't have ours.
Not sure, where's that? There you go.
These are a review of some of the dates that we've had in the past. Again, this was presented in previous months. We can just go through that. This is an illustration of how junior ADUs and ADUs can be done on the same site. We've had several applications where a garage is converted or an addition has been put in above a garage. Usually those units need to be less than 500 square feet and attached to the main unit. They can have a secondary access, but they're part of the main unit. And then you can have a secondary unit up to 1,200 square feet, and they can be two-story. Both of those units can be on the same property, so ultimately you could have 3 units, the main house, the junior ADU, and the ADU, all on the same property. We've now had 2 of those situations that we've permitted already in Solvang. The important things to look at is the vacation rentals are not allowed. The only vacation rentals are allowed in the TRC zone. Owner occupancy is no longer a requirement. So previously, we would have deed restrictions on properties that would say you have to live on there and you can rent out your unit, but that is now, under the state law, not required. Homeowners associations cannot preclude ADUs. We've had a number of questions on that already, but at this point, I'm not sure if any have come forward in an actual HOA area. We do calculate developer fees on those units that are higher than 750 square feet. It's a proportional number based on square footage. We do not charge for hookup fees because they're basically working off the same meter as the house, the current house. Fire sprinklers are not required if the house did not have sprinklers, but if they do, everything has to be sprinkled.
Regardless of the size? Sorry.
Right, yes. But if the house has sprinklers, then the ADU or the junior ADU need to be sprinklered. Okay. And then, we have no parking requirements for the ADUs. So those are pretty much the implementation of the state law. And we can go to the next slide. The application is pretty much the same as if you're going to build a brand new house. We do look for a title report only because we want to make sure that the person who's applying for it is the person, because there have been situations where somebody's trying to get a separate ownership of an ADU, and we want to make sure everybody's on there. You can't sell an ADU on an individual property. And go ahead. It is a ministerial permit, and we do need to issue the permits from the planning side within 60 days, And then the building department will move on to the actual construction plans. So it is something that we take extra care to meet that requirement and move forward with the application. The key benefits that came down from the state was obviously providing a different range of affordability and housing within the existing communities. You know, the thing that may be of concern is parking, and that is going to be the situation when we're just going to have to adapt to it. So our recommendation is, after reviewing this several times, is that we revert back to the state law, and that's direction from the Planning Commission. It's really not a vote, because we're not bringing forward a new ordinance. It's just we will implement the law as it's currently written. And we're here for any discussion.
Should we go to public for discussion first?
Sure, yes.
Is there anybody that would like to speak on this
Can you show the
online? Or
Zoom again? Is anybody on Zoom? If anybody on Zoom would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Seeing none,
seeing none? And no phone calls either?
no phone calls, no one in person.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission. Any comments?
The only questions or comments I have, I mean, we've gone over this many times, and state law is state law. They're telling us what we have to do. We have to meet it. We're not going to be in any violations. I'm sorry, you said, how many was there since the first of the year? 15?
Correct.
Were those, I looked at it, some were detached and some were inside, the
Correct.
junior attached.
Yes. Yes, there was about 5 that were conversions. 3 of them were amnesty. They had a unit already that they wanted to legalize.
Gotcha.
2 of them were new conversions. And then we had a number of independent ADUs.
And on these, I thought I read somewhere, and it could have been in this or a different one, about DR20, multifamily. They can have a percentage of ADUs? How does that work when you have a multifamily?
What they're encouraging is existing multifamily units up to, any density, to look at their design and see if there's space somewhere in that unit, and expanded hallway, a courtyard, I don't want to say laundry room, that there's opportunities to actually put in another unit or 2, and those are permitted.
And so on a new development, say, that gets approval for 43 units, is it considered a density bonus, or it's not even considered that? Later, they can come back in and do additional ADUs
Correct.
that are the smaller size.
Yes.
So as an example, a development here in town with 40 or 50 units could get additional space, not converting garages over. I mean, do they fall under the single-family dwelling? Say an apartment building has 40 units and 40 garages. They can convert all those garages over to ADUs and have 80 units, potentially.
Potentially. The way the state law, the way that it's been interpreted is that it's within the complex itself and not the carports or the garages being ADUs.
Okay.
So it's that extra space that you may have had in a common area that could become an ADU. But granted, you could probably convert some garages into an ADU
Into ADUs.
by this, yes.
When they talk about 4-foot setbacks on rear and side, is that single family, or would that also be a multi-family DR20 zone? Do we know?
Yeah, it would be It's 4 feet, rear and side for any
Or
ADU.
any ADU.
Correct.
So again, any large development, as we have a project that's coming up at some point here, spoken to by the previous public comment, we could see a lot more than the 40 or 50 or whatever it is, and the setbacks would not necessarily meet perhaps what a DR20 traditional setback is on rear and side.
Correct.
Okay. We're just throwing that out there for clarification. We could have a lot more density than we thought. And those could be built at the time that the original development is happening, or it could be a conversion perhaps later.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Scott?
If we've already answered these questions, I apologize, but on February 3rd, Commissioner Peterson had a couple questions that I don't know were actually answered or not. Is there a process of appeals for these?
No.
Okay, and then can an ADU also be a mobile home?
Yes.
All right, and the other one was?
Or a teeny home.
Tiny home.
And did we ever get clarification of the short-term rental? Is, how many days did we define for the rentals to be? Originally, it was 30, we talked about 90.
I think, was it 90?
I think it's 30 in the current city's ordinance.
Okay.
I don't think that that's addressed in state law, so it's what the city's ordinance is, except for within the TRC, and within the TRC, you in fact can have, those can become, in fact, short-term rentals.
A 30-day rental.
But within the TRC, they can actually become vacation rentals.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, just one clarification. So, the TRC I get, but under, in a residential, you do an ADU, the state law says 30 days is the minimum that you must rent it out for? Or does it not address it? I don't know, I can't remember.
I thought it said 30 days
Yeah.
Okay,
minimum.
minimum 30 days. So you could do vacation rentals up to 30 days, and you could have 12 vacation rentals throughout the year in an ADU in a residential district. Obviously, every day in a TRC zone, tourist-related commercial.
In theory, you could do the same thing with the primary residence.
Correct. You go 30, 30, 30, couldn't you? Okay, and up to 3 units or 2, and yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
So I have a question. In your summary, you talked that 2-story units were, I thought that they were not. I thought there could be a loft, but not a second story.
The law says that you can restrict to 16 feet. You can, but it doesn't limit you. It actually says you can be the height of what's permitted in the residential zone. So in the residential zone, our height is up to 35 feet. So what we've seen is, again, 1,200 square feet at 2 stories is a nice little cottage unit. And most of the ADUs that have been built with the home have just added a second story onto a garage, a 400 square foot junior ADU.
Right. Yes, but I was, maybe I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about standalone units.
Standalone units can be as tall as what's permitted in the zone district, which is 35 feet. But what we have
I thought
seen,
the state law said 16 feet.
No,
was
what
the
it's-
maximum.
I apologize, what it says is you may adopt a limitation if you adopt your own ordinance. But if you rely on state law, the height can be what's permitted in that zone district. So what we have seen is several 2-story ADUs that are average about 24 feet, at the apex of the roof. Yeah. So that's the direction we're going.
What is the timeline on that, please?
Pardon me?
What is the
Al.
timeline? Is it,
The timeline is, we're continuing to implement state law. And currently, the law that we're working with is good till 2025. And most likely, we'll see a continuance of that.
thank you.
And I think the last time we discussed this, we talked about water. And in the notes that came out, there was a comment in there from Matt that said we may not have enough water for the number of AD units that could be permissible. What can we, do we just allow ADU units in other building until we run out of water? Or do we have some way of monitoring that and allocating our water to various projects?
So the theory is, and after attending several planning association conferences, the theory is that the ADUs are smaller units, fewer people, and they, especially these standalone ones, take up some area that previously was irrigated. And so the reason that you can use your same meter, the expectation is that you're going to see a comparable water use than you had before. And so that's how they are describing the water use for ADUs in the urban areas. And it is something that we're going to have to continue to monitor, just as we are with any single-family homes or multifamily projects coming forward. There's a certain amount of water, and we need to track what's happening.
Yeah, well, I asked this question last time. Is there a plan, water plan being developed?
I would say that in the water management plan and the CIP planning currently, there's some assumptions for ADUs, and we'll just have to, they're not very large and aggressive, but we'll have to continue to monitor if we see, really different trends here. And then, of course, if any large development comes to the city, it goes through its own review process, which includes review of water and wastewater and infrastructure.
But, yeah, and I understand that we can't limit ADUs based on water, but we could put in a water usage plan that specifies the number of dwellings
As an estimate, yes.
and not limit ADUs specifically, but all new construction in the city.
The studies that we're seeing in other jurisdictions is a plan for about 20% of the existing residential units would have an ADU. So they're extrapolating out already what may happen over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. And that would have a way of gauging how the water use would be. And then, of course, it's just monitoring each meter to see what additional water they may be actually using and set that trend.
I don't think that's going to be an easy thing to do, but.
Question, again, maximum of detached ADUs is 800 square feet under state law?
1,200.
I mean, 1,200, but it's limited by square footage of the lot. No.
No.
Why am I thinking 800? We used to have a scale, I suppose, but that's gone away, so it can be
Yes.
1,200 square feet.
There were, maybe it's gone away, there used to be different requirements for 750, 800, and 1,200 square foot. Has that all gone away now?
Well, the only requirement, I think, is 750. You got to pay proportional impact fees
Correct.
over
If it's greater,
750,
yeah.
which is bizarre because of 750 in the, anyway, it doesn't make sense, but I don't know where they came up with that number. But square footage-wise, doesn't matter if you have a quarter acre, you could do a 1,200 square foot
Correct. As long as
ADU.
you meet the setback requirements.
setback requirements.
Right.
And-
And it's 4 foot on each side, but I seem to remember that there was a 20-foot in front.
Yes, you're not allowed to build an ADU in the front, but that's but you do have to respect the side and rear.
Rear, yeah, which
So the
normally is at 10% though of the lot. On a single family, it's 10, if you have 100-foot wide, it's got to be 10 and 10. This can go within 4 feet
Correct.
of it. And same with the rear, I think it's 30 feet or something, or I can't remember, 20.
Usually it's 25.
25, and then you could be within 4 of the rear. But still, the front has that setback
Correct.
requirement. And no parking, obviously, required, off-street parking required.
Correct.
Correct. And just speaking about water, you cannot have wells in the city of Solvang in a single family or anywhere. You cannot have a well. So groundwater that we have comes from wells that are owned by the city, which are down in the river. That's where the groundwater comes from. It isn't a well that a developer can put in. Either it's a large DR20 apartment complex or a single-family residence, correct?
Right,
Is all either state water, which is well water, which is the mix of the two. Yeah.
correct.
Just trying to clarify to the earlier speaker, there is no groundwater that a individual home or project can put a well in. It must come from the city, and the city must monitor that water.
It's a municipal purveyor.
Municipal, yes,
And,
Thank-
yeah, no independent wells.
correct. Thank you.
One other question, we also talked about the fire department timeline being longer than what the city, what the state imposed on the city. You were going to work with the fire department. Has that come to fruition? Have they agreed to the right numbers?
Yes, yes, we're filtering the plans to the fire department and getting their responses in a timely manner.
Okay, and one other question, following up on something Aaron said. If you have an apartment complex, could you, and there's required parking, could you use that parking to put in ADUs?
I don't have the answer off the top of my head, how many ADUs you can do in a multifamily project. Again, with the single-family homes, it's 3 or 2 additional units. In the multifamilies, I'd have to go back and look at the law to see how many additional units you could put into a multifamily unit.
I know at one time, that in one of the presentations, they gave an example of an apartment building that had, I don't know, 300 parking spaces or something. Then there was some percentage of those could be turned in, but the implication there was that was like a garage in that external. So I'm wondering about if you have that same apartment building with external parking lot, could they use the parking lot to build ADUs?
Your attorney noted that the percentage is 25% additional units. Additional units could be ADUs. Additional units could be added. Now, where would those be? They could be garages, they could be, throughout the project, extra space be converted to a junior ADU. And, junior ADUs can be as small as 120 square feet.
They just have to be separated from the rest of the,
Right, and have their
Structure.
own access.
yes.
So,
Another question, please. You mentioned that a single-family lot can have, or a single-family home can have 2 units maximum, regardless of the size of the lot?
in the single-family area, you can have the main house, a junior ADU that's part of that house, and then a standalone ADU. And
Regardless of the size of the lot?
Regardless of the size,
But only one standalone.
correct.
If you've got an acre or something, you couldn't put more on there.
No, not at this time, but I'm sure
Yeah, well,
That
they're
could be
still
coming
writing the
forward.
laws right
Well, that's
now.
what I was asking.
Just for all of those who are at home, just a reminder, none of us actually wrote the state law.
Right. Well, I don't know that there's
We
much
wanted
more
to
to
bring
discuss.
closure to this item because we have been working on it for a while, and.
For years.
Yes,
Yeah.
and with the changes that are going on, I think this is the right thing to do.
Can I ask one last question, and city attorney could probably answer this, dealing with easements. So your front yard setback, I don't know, is 30 feet, but you have easements for utilities, or you have an easement, better, rear yard easement. Some of our houses over here have these easements for utilities that go between them, but your property line is here, and you have an easement to PG&E 10 feet on both sides of the property line. Can you go within the property line of 4 feet, or is it the easement of 4 feet? How does easement law work?
You're still going to have to remain outside of any third party's easement.
By the 4 feet, do we think, or do you think it can go right to the easement and then 4 feet from property?
I'm afraid the answer is that it can go right to the edge of the easement.
Okay. But
And
it
we
would s-
have seen that.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was trying to visualize, because I know there's some utility easements that are 15 feet wide, 7.5 feet in, so you got to go 7.5 feet, and then you can build right there. It's not 4 feet from the easement, it's 4 feet from the property, or right at the easement line. Makes sense.
and that's why having the title report helps
course.
be able to confirm, especially with those small setbacks, that we're not infringing on an existing easement.
Correct, whether it's a neighbor's driveway or utility, or the front yard, there's the street up in front, or whatever it is. Yeah,
Correct.
makes sense. Thank you.
Well, thank you
Good.
very much.
So it sounds like there's really nothing we can do. I mean, we could talk for another 3 years and come up with a plan that the state would say we can't do.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like would happen. So there, we don't have to make a motion or anything on this, do we?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I vote we accept the report.
Thank you.
Anybody else wants to object? I don't know.
Is what it is.
Yeah, accept the
So we won't be bringing this back again.
Okay.
Unless something changes, which with the state legislature and governor, there's always a chance something could change.
So the next item on the agenda is a briefing on, and for information purposes, on what's happening at the state level in regards to what's called regional housing needs assessment allotments. Every 8 years or so, the state reallocates and reviews where their commitments have been to housing and what the obligations have been throughout the state, each jurisdiction, each county. And we're in that cycle again. This is the 6th cycle, and the state looks back on what's been accomplished and how housing has been developed, and also obligations of each jurisdiction. So the Santa Barbara Association of Governments is the responsible agency that negotiates with the state on how many units the county will be obligated to plan for in this next cycle. They are currently doing that work right now, and that's the first step. The second step is that the SBCAG will work with each one of the jurisdictions to see what is their capability and limitations for accepting housing in their area. So surveys have gone out. They're asking about resources like water and sewer, limitations on their boundaries, what areas that they have available still for development, and also some information in regards to jobs and, employment base and how their housing jobs balance is working. They'll take all of that information, and once the numbers have come down from the state, they'll start looking at each one of the different cities and the county to see how that number could be absorbed for the next 8 years to 10-year cycle. Right now, once they made those allocations or assign those numbers to each jurisdiction, the jurisdiction has 45 days to respond whether they can accept those numbers. And that process is negotiations as each one of these assignments come out. And we will determine how we can meet those numbers when they're signed. What has been discussed so far is an expectation that the County of Santa Barbara will be assigned about 30,000 units that they will need to plan for the next 10 years. And that's the 7 cities plus the county absorbing those units. In the staff report, there was a schedule of events for the coming year as to how they're going to do those assignments. And then, once those numbers are given to each jurisdiction, those numbers will also roll into each jurisdiction's update to their housing element, their land use elements, their circulation elements, to see how they can absorb those units. The one thing in all of this is ADUs do count as part of the assignment of numbers. So as we start seeing more of these, you'll see ADUs being reported as part of the assigned numbers. The other thing that will be happening by October is the state is giving out about $2 million to each or they're giving money to each jurisdiction. And county, Santa Barbara County has about $2 million coming forward. And they have already gone through a review of each jurisdiction and have assigned Solvang about $117,000 to update their general plan. So we will get some money. We do have to apply for it. There will be a resolution taken to the city council for that application. And so we wanted to let you know about this first so you can understand why we're going to apply for that money. It will be used for updating our housing element. So over the next couple of, I'd say the next 6 months, you'll be hearing more and more about RENA numbers and how they're going to be looked at all the way across this county. So,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
With the numbers, whatever the number is, we have to, after negotiations, that we're going to have some number of new units. Do we just have to show a plan on how we're going to do that over the next 10 years, or do we actually have to build them?
Well, we had this discussion last month about how we report to the state every year on the different levels of income as well as the different housing types. And the state is expecting jurisdictions to meet their obligation. The county or the city does not build those units, but they allow the ability for homeowners and builders and developers to build projects, and they want to encourage that to happen. So the state can come down on jurisdictions that aren't meeting their obligation with, threat of lawsuit or holding up money, and they have threatened to do that recently. And so it is definitely a plan, but a plan that should be implemented.
I just want to be careful. They haven't threatened solving that. So I would note one of the other things that this legislature and governor did in 2017, there was a law passed called the SB 35 Streamlining Act, which actually required that jurisdictions make it much easier for builders to actually implement affordable housing projects. And Solvang, so congratulations, Solvang is one of only 29 out of, I think it is 380 communities in the state of California, which is not currently subject to those SB 35 streamlining requirements. So you have been doing something right the last 3 years, and the state has recognized that, at least for SB 35 purposes.
And just one more question. with the urban boundary resolution, is that going to have any effect on our ability for meeting the housing requirements?
Well, the first answer would be no, because they're going to assign the numbers with whatever area that the city has. It does have a limitation in that if you wanted to pursue an annexation for growth for some of these units, there's very limited areas based on the urban boundary agreement that would apply. So it would be more of a looking at what lands are underdeveloped or not developed, or densifying those areas throughout the city that could take more units. One of the thoughts was the TRZ zone could be, looking at apartments or something within the TRZ zone and encourage that to happen. So there's a lot of creativity in looking at how to create housing in an urban area. And that's what we're going to be struggling with and bringing forward to you with the housing element and the land use element and the other documents that we're going to be generating over the next year.
Right, so you're heading into a general plan comprehensive update, which RFP actually just went out today. So all of that will be taken into account. And of course, urban growth boundary is one of the policies and limitations that that general plan will have to take into account.
So we have a lot of work ahead of us, both in the negotiations of the numbers that are going to be assigned to us, and then implementing that in our general plan and housing element. And we'll be bringing that all forward to you as we bring a consultant on board and start inventorying what we have available for development in the future.
Quick question. When you say negotiation, that's with the county. The county will be assigned the overall umbrella, and then it's, right? So it's a
Correct.
negotiation. No, Orc should take more. Santa Maria, why should we? Yeah, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
We did this before.
Yeah,
This is when a lot of these lots got rezoned, as did Mr. St. George's, which was the Skip property, and the stuff on Alamo, Pintada, and Copenhagen, to meet our needs. And we had that number, and maybe that's why we've done well, at least in the initial review.
Well, the interesting thing is if you, again, I believe I put the table in the staff report, was the last assignment to the county was about 11,500 units. This time it's 30,000 units. And so there's as much as, people and jurisdictions have tried to meet their obligation, the challenge is even higher this time.
Yeah, but I would just mention SBCAG is working collaboratively with all the jurisdictions to develop a methodology on how we agree to develop this. And one of the things that they are talking about is also taking into account transportation and circulation. So they are looking at methodologies that perhaps tie the number of units closer to jobs, which I think will probably be a good thing for Solvang versus Santa Maria, and other areas might have more units.
So, and are other areas seeing the same sort of triple the growth over last time? So can I read into that the state is expecting that the population of the state is going to triple in the next 10 years? Is that what they're saying?
I don't think that that's the extrapolation you can make, but at this point, the goal is to provide housing, and there is a need. And so this is how they're interpreting the goal and meeting that obligation. And remember, the units that we're talking about could be anything from a studio apartment for one person or, two, and all the way up to single-family homes for a full family.
Right. Or an ADU.
Yeah. So we wanted to brief you on this because you'll be seeing more and more of this information coming out. And the fact that we're taking on the work with the general plan at the same time is obviously timely. And we'll be looking at the next 10-year general plan update. So,
Let's move on to item C
Yeah.
if there's no more questions.
the next item is just an update on projects. We've provided the status report, and just want to make sure if the Planning Commission has any questions, we can address them. Things are moving through both the planning and building department. It's good to see things going through. We do have about 5 items that will be coming towards the Planning Commission here in the next 2 months or so. And do you have any questions on the status report?
Just something that, with Ed St. George, is that off the table now that he's proposing to build apartments there? And
So-
is he not proceeding? What is the status of that?
So he has submitted a brand new application that I understand he's submitting under SB 330, which is another new state law that went into effect January of this year that allows a much more streamlined processing for housing projects. And what he's proposing now is a pure housing project. So he has submitted an original application that you have seen in the newspaper. We are working with him to get back to him and work out the requirements of SB 330 that he's indicated this application to be under. Once we receive full application from him, we may actually call on the Planning Commission to potentially have maybe a special meeting for that project before September, depending on timing.
And the important thing is that the application that's been submitted is on the property that was formerly the Mitch Williams property. It does not cover the area where the Vets Hall is. So that
That's
site,
why I asked the
Yeah.
question.
Thank you.
and that site has a designation of DR20. So he could have about 44 units on there based on the acreage. The application that's come in is about 59 units.
For the bonus density question.
Correct.
Back on that, because it's confusing to a lot of folks out there, what's going on? I mean, this project fully, absolutely falls within what I would consider the BAR authority. Is there a BAR? Will they meet on something like this? I understand
So
we've got
the-
some streamlined
okay.
things with signs and things, but on something of this, will that be reinstituted?
We are currently in recruitment for branding and design committee. The recruitment is open, information and the application is on city website. The recruitment priority deadline closes on August 17th. And so the branding and design committee, BDC, was formed to take over the duties of the BAR, which would look at the architecture and design elements of a project.
Do we anticipate that that would be a committee instituted prior to this quick review process that's taking place under his current application?
We will move as quickly as possible. It will depend on how many applicants are there, and the council will need to appoint that committee. But we would not be able to hold this project based on BDC formation or their action.
The important thing is that this particular SB 330 gives a whole series of steps that we need to process this application under, but it still needs to go through environmental review. And so we do have, an expedited process. We also have limited public hearings that we can hold. But it will still go through all of the normal steps that you would normally have. We just need to do them faster.
Traffic.
And there's only
and-
5 public hearings, so.
But
only have objective design standards applied to it. So
Yeah.
it cannot have a subjective review process.
Oh, yeah,
what,
So
So I would just note,
yeah.
one of the significant things is specifically, just like ADUs, we can only apply what the law calls an objective design standard to it, so we cannot take it through a subjective design review process. So from my review of the section, it wouldn't go through what you've historically had from BAR or BDC review. It's
And that is why? Because of the new law?
because of the new, they actually call it the Housing Crisis Act. And so,
And specifically takes out any subjective review of design guidelines.
takes out subjective review of design guidelines, and it also only allows the city to deny a project based upon and their housing count provisions, but you can't reduce the housing count unless you make certain objective determinations based upon the existing general plan. And then the city actually has the burden of showing that that was the basis for its changes. So it's, I'll just call it, it's an uncity-friendly process.
And that applies even to a city that has an element in its general plan of design guidelines. I mean, most cities don't. There's probably only a handful of us that have that design guidelines as an actual element in our general plan. It applies to that also. I mean, that's the read on it.
So my read, the language is very, very similar to the ADU language in the ADU law. I think it was even written by the same person.
And again, that applies because it is a multifamily development under this new law.
Yeah, and I haven't actually seen a full application, so I don't know. I think we're all in the boat where we don't know, as we sit here today, whether that section does or doesn't apply, and we're trying to get that clarification and hope to have it, I'm hoping, in the next few days.
Yeah, if we can keep abreast of that, that would be, I mean, give it us too, thank you, it would help in ours.
I would just note, one of the other challenges is if it in fact does fall within that section, the total number of hearings that the city can have on the project is limited to 5. And so, of whatever kind, including a design review, planning commission, or city council
Public
hearing.
hearings, any of that.
Exactly.
Any of that, but there's not a timeline set on that, like a month. I mean, it's,
My recollection is that there is a 60-day after environmental review timeline.
and of course, he will, any development will have to go through the EIR process of traffic, fire safety, all
Right.
those things. Those weren't waived.
No.
I mean, that's still going to be in level D or level A or whatever the intersections are in access and all those things, correct?
Correct.
So, okay. Just the design subjectivity is lessened,
Lessened or eliminated?
almost eliminated. Well, I suppose, yeah. I mean, but you also have some of those requirements that, and we'd have to talk about that more of to how many, when you're doing your density bonus, then you can only, you can request a waiver of some certain things like height or density or lot, parking, lot coverage. And if you're asking for a waiver of height, say on a project, then is that up to the applicant or is that up to a planning commission to decide which of the 5 that we're going to waive?
Yeah, you can have 2. And
At your request, and you get to.
you get 2. And so we have an application that is requesting certain benefits, and one of them is height.
And it's at the applicant's request. We cannot say, oh, no, we'll give you the parking, but we won't give you the height. He's asked for height as an example, then he or she would get that.
Right. And part of this also is what the application is giving is low-income units.
Correct,
They are dedicating low-income units.
yes.
As
That's
part
the
of the project.
bonus density and everything
Correct.
else, and that's, you fall into the category, and then you can ask for the waiver of the 2 that you'd
Yes.
like.
So that project, we are just starting that came in last week. We're reviewing the law. We're looking at what the submittal requirements are going to be, and, making sure that he falls under that category. Otherwise, even without SB 330, if it, for whatever reason, doesn't go there, he still can do the density bonus process, and it'll still go through. It just gives us a little bit more breathing room of going through the process, rather than just meeting the pretty stringent requirements under SB 330.
At one point, there was talk about how there was going to be, on that same project, a development of the Vets Hall in that lot. What is the status of that? Did that go away? Did he change the application?
All of that is currently on hold. The only thing that Ed St. George has ever formally submitted to the city is the current housing project. Everything else is just preliminary discussions. Those preliminary discussions are now on hold, and we are basically moving with the direction of going through a general plan update to have that vision and conversation with the community.
Okay, and
So the things on hold, does that include, which didn't get much discussion, the upgrades to the park? And I think there was talk of a
yes.
new hotel over there. That's
All of
hotel,
those,
mixed-use,
all of
retail.
those discussions are on hold. We are just focusing on bringing in a consultant for the general plan update, and much of that focus in that update will be the community vision and the economic development and all those elements.
And there'll be a lot of input on that,
Exactly,
whoever's interested.
right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just one, sorry, one more. In the newspaper article about the proposal we're just talking about, Ed St. George said that he had submitted a proposal for that lot to build a hotel there. He said he submitted that to the city and never heard anything back.
He never submitted a formal application to the city. So I have checked with planning and building. There was not a formal application for a hotel on his private property submitted.
It's just, it was in the paper. Sometimes the paper gets broke.
Right. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so just to keep you abreast of what's happening, this is bringing you the status report every month.
Okay. So, any other comments on this or anything?
Could you clarify, because it's gotten confusing as to, for me anyway, conflict of interest and in distance to projects. It used to be very clear, it's 300 feet, 500 feet, but there's, just to clarify that, if you would. There's like an absolute, and then there's a gray area now, from what I understand. Does that make sense, or am I just completely off the mark?
I'm not aware of any gray area. There's still an absolute, it's 500 feet, and I don't remember if there's a map for planning commissioners
There
as
is.
well. I've seen the one
I
for
thought it
council
had been
members.
extended to 1,000 feet.
That's what I thought too.
I don't
for
believe
some
so. I believe
reason.
that it's still 500. I'll check that for your next
It
meeting.
seemed like the
on that,
previous city attorney said, well, 500 absolute, and within 1,000, you could be, maybe it's iffy, but I can't remember that.
I remember
Something
having to
that
recuse
discussion.
myself because it was when I had the wandering dog and it was within 1,000 feet.
1,000. It was, yeah, I don't know if we could.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything like that, and that would, you're a fairly small city that,
It could never just
that
be-
obviously would probably prevent many of
A
you
lot.
from voting on anything.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
And I believe that it's 500, and I'll reconfirm that.
okay. And maybe an email out to us just to
Yeah.
have it. And, yeah, okay, thank you.
And I think there was a discussion recently also on, was there a conflict of interest because a change might affect somebody's business, but if it affects everybody, then that's fine, equally, yes. So. Okay, we do have a couple, unless there's nothing else from the Planning Commission, we'd like to do a little bit of a report for the staff.
Okay,
Last week, Zena made a presentation on updating of planning and building processes and procedures. And I don't know if you want to continue
Sure,
with that.
I'll go ahead and basically run you through what the council heard really briefly. I did an update just for clarification where we are with all the changes in planning and building department. I think it's one of the areas where there was a lot of work to be done, a lot of work still to be done, a lot of changes going on. Obviously, some of the bigger picture important processes kicking off, like the general plan update that hasn't been updated in a very long time, including the design element that hasn't been updated since 1988, which is basically shortly after the city of Solvang incorporated. So those will be important discussions, but also just to give you a really brief highlight of where we are with operations. As you know, with COVID-19, the city took significant reductions in staffing, including building and planning department. And so right now we are working under COVID-19, transitioned to partially kind of intermediary step of being more remote, being more online, doing more things through the web and the email process. And we are also working, because of that shortage of staffing, with limited hours. So our planning department is here a couple of afternoons. Our building department is only open 1 day a week. We do everything by email, most of it, and then also make appointments for those things that still need to be done in person. Building and planning at the city of Solvang has been sort of a little bit outdated, or much outdated, in terms of utilizing information technology for its processes. It's a very or completely paper-based environment prior to COVID-19, so we're making a lot of changes as we go along. And one of the things to really look forward to is the implementation of the Dude Solutions software, which is a permitting software, which will house all data for each parcel in the city electronically. So all processes will be able to be done electronically. All of the permits, any licenses, any code enforcement issues, everything will be easily attached to that one parcel, whether it's a residential unit or a commercial unit, where staff would be able to quickly review and move things forward. There will also be a self-service portal, which I think will be very useful for the community, to where once you submit a project, everyone will be able to see where exactly their project is in the processing without having to contact staff. So I think in the longer term, that will definitely be helpful for us to continue to maintain lower expenditures, but being able to process projects more efficiently. Then you also heard about the branding and design committee. That recruitment, just for everybody that's listening, is right now ongoing. We look forward to applications submitted by August 17th. Those applications will then be forwarded to the City Council for their appointment of individuals to the BDC. The current appointment will be through December 31. All appointments are always on an annual basis through December 31. And there was some changes made to the BDC compared to the BAR, to where there's some clarifications for 3 members of that committee to have specific expertise that are aligned with the BDC duties. And it also allows people that are not Solvang residents to apply, with an encouragement to, or to extent possible, to fill all seats from individuals from Santa Ynez Valley. And then of course, actually the council at the last council meeting also extended the building permit amnesty program through December 31st to help those who have unpermitted projects to come into the city without any penalties and be able to address those health and safety concerns that may be out there because people are not coming in and getting properly permitted through the city. So we encourage everyone, even though there might be some trust issues with people, being willing to come in and say that they have something unpermitted, but we really encourage everybody to come in and get their projects properly permitted. And then of course the general plan update. Very excited that RFP is out as of today. It will close on August 31st. It is very much focused on that visioning process, having the expert that we bring in, having expertise in working with communities that are similar to the city of Solvang, to where they would be able to have workshops, surveys, multiple venues of engagement to update for the first time in a very long time all of the general plan elements comprehensively. So I think that will be extremely helpful to address both the vision of Solvang in the future and address any of the other issues that we hear, concerns with infrastructure, water, sewer, traffic. So that will be something that we will be focusing throughout the next year, which will help us with all the larger development applications and looking into the future.
One of the things that's really important with the general plan updates now, again, with CEQA and state law, is the public vetting of the project, especially at the beginning. So as Zena indicated, general plans that are getting started now usually take between 6 months to maybe even a year, depending on the size of the city, going out to all of the different community groups, community members, churches, clubs, any way possible to find those that could have, be invited into the process. Most people are, don't really want to engage in government, but if you go out and ask, they will have an opinion. And that's why a lot of effort is made in trying to get as many people involved in the project early on as possible to hear what they have to say in the surveys. The meetings, the workshops are a way to make that happen.
I thought I read that it would be, you said a year, I read that it could be as much as 18 months.
So
Did I misread that?
no, the request for proposal for the entire process, the way that I've formed the RFPs at this point, subject to obviously the applications, negotiation, discussions with consultants, but the original proposal is to do it in 18 months. It's pretty short, but we are also a small city, so I would say that probably the public engagement is about a 6 months window, and then we move into the more technical updates of those elements.
Okay. Sounds like,
Thank you.
So those are the items that we have for you today, and we're available for any questions. Otherwise, that's it.
Just a clarification, I'm still fixated on this waiving of 2 elements because you're under this new law. And our height limitation is 35 feet, and we have an application that's 45 feet. Could the application come in at 95 feet tall, and that would be a waiver? Or is it a 10% or a 5% or 2%? I mean, there must be something. You just can't say, I'm going to ask to waive all parking on this structure. That's number 1. I'm going to ask to go 85 feet in the air. That's number 2, and I get them carte blanche. Can't work that way.
The one thing that we definitely, in regards to height, would be looking at what can the fire department serve? Because that's a health and safety issue. And so we'll be working with the fire department on this to make sure that they're able to serve a building of that height. And, what kind of access points do they have? So again, an 85-foot high building, there's not a fire department in this area that could serve that, so.
How high is the ladder go for the casino? I think it's 60 feet or
Yeah.
something. So we could go 60 feet, and you'd say it meets that, and you could eliminate all parking. I don't want any parking on my project at all. That's number 2, and those what you could get. It doesn't pass the smell test for me that it would just be carte blanche that you could eliminate all parking up to 3 spots, and you go 65 feet because you got a hook and ladder that goes that high. Anyway, it needs to be, obviously we're going to have some hearings on it, but I don't want the public or anyone listening that it's just going to be this carte blanche. You can just ask for 2 waivers. I could be absolutely wrong, and that the state has come in and just said, no, you get 2 of the 6 elements, and you get to waive it all, and it's your call, your choice. It doesn't seem correct to me, and I'm just saying staff needs to prepare for that, because those are the issues that are coming up on a project of this size.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.